my black guy. Hey, my people, this say them lied to us from a long time, but the truth done show now. Oh, Israelite right, Zion children right. Them say we nothing, but we be the chosen. From the Bible, the prophecy still spoken. Black man, native man with a holy tribe, but colonial hand tried to kill the vibe. Ain't just black, prophets black, the history clear. But people, this say them lied to us from a long time, but the truth done show now. Oh, Israelite right, Zion children right. Them say we nothing, but we be the chosen. From the Bible, the prophecy still spoken. Black man, native man with a holy tribe, but colonial hand tried to kill the vibe. Ain't just black, prophets black, the history clear, but Babylon system cover it for years. Now we shouting louder, the trumpet sound. Children of Jacob, we stand our ground. Billions are waiting for the message. Oh, oh, thousand they cry for the message. Hey, hey. Billions are hungry for the message. Yeah, yeah. This is the truth where the prophet done bless. From Jerusalem to Africa, they scatter. We to the islands to the west in slavery. Change our names, put chain on our neck, but the covenant of Yah still they protect. It shall rule, but not Jacob time. End of the age, prophecy online. From the ghetto to the village, we testify. Israelite, we can never die. Billions are waiting for the message. Oh, oh, thousand they cry for the message. Yeah, yeah. Billions are hungry for the message. Yeah, yeah. The truth of the Bible must reach every flesh. Who are the chosen? We are the chosen. Who are the children? We are the children. From Zion, from Judah, from Israel, we rise. Millions are waiting for the message. Oh, oh, Jews and they're thirsty for the message. Yeah, yeah. Billions are yearning for the message. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, folks, that is where I want to say a special greetings and welcome to all of you locked into that space at this time.
Jacob, we stand our ground. Billions are waiting.
It's already 5 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, not just in Dominica, but in the Eastern Caribbean in which we live.
The message. Hey, hey. Billions are hot.
And so, yes, that is where I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Vibes, the Civic Vibes program.
Prophet don't bless.
A very, very interesting program awaits you guys out there. So all I ask is that you keep it locked to the sport that you got.
Chain on our neck, but the covenant of Yah still they protect. It shall rule, but not Jacob.
We're starting with this number from Steffa Productions.
From the ghetto to the village, we testify. Israelite, we can never die.
The millions are waiting for the message.
Say, oh, oh, thousand they cry for the message.
So yes, each one of you out there,
Cry for the message.
I know you guys are waiting for the message from Civic Vibes as well. So thank you very much for your eyes and ears each and every time.
Who are the chosen? We are the chosen.
Today being the 23rd day of November 2025.
Them say we nothing, but we be the chosen.
A very important topic awaits you guys out there this evening.
Black man, native man with a holy tribe. But
and yes, it's on everybody's lips, especially those of us who are living in this region.
The history clear.
It's this ongoing showdown.
Years, now we shouting louder.
I repeat, this ongoing showdown.
Jacob, we stand our ground.
By the United States and Venezuela of late.
Message. Oh.
Are there consequences?
They cry for the message.
Are there consequences for us who live in this region in particular?
Message.
We have none other, yes, none other,
where the prophet don't bless,
than former ambassador from Dominica to the United Nations, Mr. Crispin Gregoire. should call him Honorable Gregoire.
Chain on our neck, but the covenant of Yah.
He is here to help us this evening unpack that all important question or questions.
Of the age, prophecy online, from the ghetto to the village, we testify.
So yes, Brother Gregoire is in the house. And you'll be hearing from him in just a bit. As he helps us navigate those very murky waters as it pertains to the military mights out there of the United States and Venezuela.
The truth of the Bible must reach every flesh.
That is what Civic Vibes, this program, is all about, huh? Bringing you the up-to-date information as things unfold.
Try to kill the vibe. Angels black, prophets black.
And so yes, we are here again for yet another Sunday evening.
We shouting louder the trumpet.
Please tell Lou to tell Sue
we stand out
that their favorite program is on.
Waiting for the man.
Tell Paul to tell all.
Thousand they cry for the message.
Till we bring it down to the curtains about the 8 o'clock hour tonight.
Message.
Much food for thought in there.
This is the truth where the prophet don't bless. From Jerusalem.
And folks, guess who is back?
Islands to the west in slavery. Change our names.
Guess who is back, folks?
Covenant of Yah, still they protect.
Should I say he or he's resurrected?
Of the age, prophecy online.
He will tell you all about it. Brother Alvin Thomas, good evening to you, my brother, and welcome back.
Yes, Lofty. Good evening, my friend. Good evening. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well. Better you're back. And so, yes, I'm expecting a very, very good program with you on this evening. Has been some time.
Absolutely. I can see that brightness in your eyes and on your face. I thought today you were celebrating something, a birthday or something, or you won the lottery.
Well, I'm celebrating life, brother.
All right, that's good. I certainly endorse that. But Lofty, it's really good to be back after having been away for a while. As you may be aware, my hands were filled with a number of different things over the last several weeks. Although I was in Dominica, of course, I did have a very welcoming and a lovely stay in Dominica. Despite everything, when you reach there, the island itself is a beautiful island, the country itself. And there's still a lot that one can do when they visit, namely go to the beach, have a bath in the sea, have a bath in the river, although that too is being threatened, but some of it is still left, the glow show. So I had a pretty good stay there, spend the independence celebration there. And it was all part, I was all involved with the St. Mary's Academy, class of 74-75. We hosted a reunion for our school, our alma mater, which went very well. And while on that, I just want to say thank you to all those who supported us during the reunion. And then, of course, I hang on for the Creole Festival. And then, of course, I traveled to St. Croix, where I had the honor of laying to rest my dear uncle, the bosom buddy Ted Daly, as you know, who passed and was laid to rest in St. Croix just earlier this month, actually. So that has been my life story over the last several weeks. But it's good to be back. It's really, really good to be back and to engage and to have that conversation. As I always say, what we do on Civic Vibes every Sunday is to have a conversation with the people and to have that conversation with a view towards folks taking action, doing something. And as I've said before, each of us can do a little something in our own little way. And if we bring that together collectively, we can create change, we can create an impact in our societies, in our communities, in our country. So yes, I'm happy to be back. I wish to say to all my fans who've been asking about me, because when I go back and look at the programs that you've had in the past since I've been gone, I see the warm and best wishes that's always extended on the program to me. So I'm very humbled and thankful for that. But like you said, today we have a very interesting program. I think it's an area that is worth having some conversation, not just one conversation. We have to build up the dialogue and the conversation as we move along on that particular topic. So like you, I'm happy to welcome my good friend, Crispin Gregoire, to this afternoon's conversation. Crispin and I go way, way, way back. As a matter of fact, he's an SMA old boy too. So we have something there in common. But I think the conversation this evening, as you will soon introduce, of course, is very pertinent. It has implication for a number of areas and for us in the region, the man on the street, the businessman, the politician, whoever that is. So I'm looking forward to engaging Brother Christine and our guests, who I'm sure will be chiming in as we go along on this evening program.
Children of Jacob, we stand our ground. Billions are waiting for.
All right, thank you very much, my brother Alvin.
Oh.
Nice having you back, huh?
For the message.
Mr. Dorian Dorival, Guvelma Hambrin, Mali Yostri, Ivinia Joseph, Clarolyn Warrington, and the host of you guys already here. Thank you very much. Carol Bruni, good evening to you. Ivinia, good evening, she said here. Present teachers, good evening, patriots. Anya Dunfried, you're always in the house. Good evening to you. Stephanie John Baptist, Donna Philbert Peterson, good evening as well. And the list goes on and on. Madeline Augustine, good evening to you guys out there.
We can never die.
Yes, folks, we can never die.
The message.
Billions are waiting for that message out there, huh?
Billions are hungry for the message.
So, folks, without saying much more,
the truth of the Bible.
Let us just move across now and welcome in a very, very special way the man himself, the man of the 2 hour, should we say that? Mr. Honorable, should I add to that, handle it to your name, brother? Crispin Gregoire, good evening to you in a very special way, bro. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, Lofty, and good evening, Alvin Thomas. It's great pleasure to be on your program on Civic Vibes one more time. And yeah, I look forward to having an interesting conversation with the two of you.
Yes, indeed. Crispin, the Dominican people, they may have been hearing you. We normally hear you on another station, Q95, that is to be precise, ever so often. But, just give the people an idea, what has Crispin Gregoire been up to of late?
Yes. Well, Lofty, as you and Alvin probably know, I've been self-employed for some years and doing consulting work in different arenas. I happen to have different skill sets, so sometimes I have to employ them to earn a living. Lately, I've been doing some work with some nonprofits. Having been the person who organized the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, I have a global kind of connection to Indigenous peoples all over the world, and we're talking about 300 to 400 million Indigenous people in the world. I am using the opportunity of that connection to also connect the Kalinago Council and the Kalinago Chief to these global indigenous networks. I've also been working on technology transfer from Africa to the Caribbean, trying some experiments. We don't have a lot of trade with the continent, but it's one of the things that I think will emerge, especially after the African Union CARICOM summit that was held in early September. So, on the Dominica front, I'm trying to get my processing plant for turmeric and ginger is something I've been working on, and also been producing turmeric, and I'm actually harvesting as we speak. So that's my Dominica work, farming and yes. So that's in a nutshell what I'm doing.
In a nutshell. All right, Crispin, thank you very much for sort of bringing us up to speed, up to date, as it were, with you, brother Crispin Gregoire. Anthony JB, you're locked in. Good evening to you. Owen Prosper, you're also there. Clarolyn Warrington. Clyde Gregoire and the folks who are there with us. Good evening to you in a very special way. Folks, if you're tuning in now and you may have missed it, we're going to have a very interesting, a very candid conversation with the brother you just heard a while ago, Mr. Crispin Gregoire, surrounding the unfolding, I should say, situation in the United States and Venezuela of late. As well, we have heard of the announcements, and these two countries, they are in campaign mode as we speak. St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be touching on that as well. And sort of bringing back that conversation or these conversations home to us in Dominica to make it have some meaning or make it be meaningful to us in Dominica. So please keep it locked, and you can participate sometime later when we open up our lines so that you can call in or send in a message, read your contributions indeed. 17 minutes already past the hour of 6 o'clock, and I think that is the right time that for us to, shoot across now. Alvin, Thomas, good evening to you again. I know you too, Alvin, you're out there, but you have been following that situation. Just sort of set that foundation for us in terms of the engagement we're about to have with Brother Gregoire as we're about to, take flight, as it were.
Yes, certainly lovely. Well, again, let me say welcome to our good friend Crispin. And the topic this afternoon, or this evening rather, should be of significant importance or relevance to every one of us in the region, every one of us, every citizen of the region. And I'm saying so against the background that this, what we could describe as a sharp U.S.-Venezuela military confrontation, that's how I describe it, in the Southern Caribbean would have far wide ranging, and it would largely create quite a bit of negative consequences for the region. And what we have seen lately, by way of an increased military presence, risk the incidents at sea. We have seen where the U.S. has blown out as many as what? I think 19 or thereabout ships in the region, if I'm not mistaken, thereabout, and 75 persons killed. We've also seen what we could describe as political polarization among the Caribbean states. We know what Trinidad's position is on that, in the sense that pretty much on the side of the US and not on that of Venezuela. Certainly there's going to be economic disruption. I think Crispin on another program that he was made reference to that in the area of tourism, for example, shipping, energy, as well as displacement and humanitarian stress. We'll also see a greater influence of outside powers, namely Russia and China, as well as pressure on regional organizations to respond or mediate. And by that, I'm referencing CARICOM, the OECS, and all the other regional bodies that exist in the Caribbean. So the recent US naval buildup and Venezuela countermove, and as well as international reactions, make this risk tangible. So to start up the conversation, I think what we could ask Crispin to do for us, as a former ambassador to the UN, and one who have had extensive interaction with various ambassadors, not just in the region, but worldwide, because by virtue of his position as former UN ambassador, he's been able to interact with countries across the globe. Just kind of put that for us into some perspective, because folks might be saying, well, why are you all raising something that is not a threat or a non-issue, or this is just something between Venezuela and the US, and once we get Maduro out, then the situation settles. I think there are much wider implications. And we are quickly entering into a new year, 2026. How are we likely to see that new year? Because like I said, it's possible that aviation will be disrupted, tourism will be disrupted, shipping will be disrupted, a whole number of things. And based on what the US has shown in terms of the military buildup they have shown, it seems very imminent that they're on to doing what they said they want to do. So Crispin, just paint that for us as a start. So the man out there, the average man on the street, wouldn't find this thing too complicated and to be able to relate it to his or her life back home in Dominica, Trinidad, Guyana, wherever that is. So they understand clearly what is at stake there.
Yes, well, there are many pieces to this larger puzzle that is Venezuela. And of course, you know, maybe after Ukraine, Venezuela is probably the most topical country in terms of United States media coverage. It's not by accident that that's the case. President Trump has been speaking very directly about this situation, and the most recent thing he said in the last 2 days is that he has made a decision about what is going to happen in Venezuela. So we can only expect not very good things. I would say that the real concern of US military intervention is real and could happen any day now. A good yardstick of that is when the largest battleship in the world, the USS Gerald Ford, was moved from the Mediterranean Sea to the Caribbean. This is the largest ship ever built. I think it was they finished building it in about 2017, 2018. And that ship carries 75 war fighter jets. That ship carries 4,000 Navy personnel. These are soldiers. That warship carries the most sophisticated missiles that you could think about. And it's clear to me, and there are about, in addition to that warship, there are about 12 other warships there. And the most recent reports as of yesterday and this morning is that these American bombers have been flying just about 100 miles off the coast of Venezuela. So that tells you things are escalating. I wanted to start by focusing on one of the most hot issues in all of this is that the US has all of this naval ships there, but they're just shooting people. They're just shooting at boats in the waters, and they have killed fishermen. And the question now is that a crime against humanity? And it could very well be. That is like a summary execution, because you've not been given the opportunity to present yourself before court, and you're just shot at and killed in the sea, and they don't even know who is killed. One of the things that this is an issue that is coming up in Washington as the president has made whatever decision he's made, and I believe that that decision is to remove the Maduro administration. I think that we almost at that point where things will just explode. Now, typically a president, when he goes to war, must have the permission of Congress. especially the Senate. Of course, President Trump is lucky to have both houses of Congress under his party. So getting approval to intervene or a military intervention in Venezuela, that of congressmen and senators who are skeptical, like Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. I think it's Kentucky he's from, right, Alvin? And Rand Paul has taken a very hardline
Yes.
position. He's Republican, but he's raising concerns about the rights of people to have uh, justice. You can't just be blowing little boats off, and when you could simply surround them. If they're carrying something, then you'll find out. Surround them, and so that's a concern that I wanted to raise, and it's going to be a continuing one as we go forward on this, because the U.S. has continued to say it's because of drug guys and drug. They want to end drug trafficking. But here's something I wanted to say. Last thing on this, you might have remembered Alvin and Loftus that the commander, the admiral responsible for the Southern Command, his name was Admiral Alvin Halsey. He has your name, Alvin.
I know that, yes.
Admiral Alvin Halsey. He was a black man. He's a black man, Admiral.
Mhm.
He decided to step down in October as the head of the Southern Command based in Panama. After the administration took a decision to start targeting suspected drug boats in the Caribbean and now the Pacific. So it's not just the Caribbean, it's also on the other side, on the Pacific side. Halsey, interestingly, had reportedly raised concerns about strikes, about these strikes. He had serious concerns about that, and that's one of the reasons why he resigned. So I just wanted to put that in the mix, that all is not well in Washington with this intervention. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that intro, Crispin. As you sought to paint a landscape of what is taking place. But I know the conversation have just started. But why should we be of concern? I mean, this is a Venezuela US issue. I mean, we'll be okay. I mean, they'll fight their war, and at the end of the day, there'll be casualties. But is there really need for concern? I mean, are we overstating the issue?
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, something I have started to promote, and I will be promoting that more actively, is that we should be concerned because, one, Venezuela is our neighbor. Venezuela, the state of Venezuela is only 80 miles off our west coast at Isla de Aves, Bird Island, what we call Bird Island. We call it Isla de Aves.
Yeah.
If you really want to learn about Bird Island, that's the name you got to put in the search engine. Isla for island, de Aves. That is island of birds. Isla de Aves in Spanish. And you'll even see photos of Bird Island. Well, Bird Island is in our exclusive economic zone of 200 miles. That makes Venezuela one of our neighbors by water and land. Because that little island, it's not even an island, it's a sandbank. And sandbanks don't have territorial waters. They uh, uh, because they can't have habitation there. People can't live there. They don't have water. They don't. First of all, that one, it always gets washed all day long by the tide. The tide. If you have high tide, that place is submerged. What the Venezuelans did is they built a naval base there. And you can well imagine if there's a fight with them, the US could just take over that base 80 miles off our shore. So I wanted to put that in the mix. There is a Venezuelan base there, naval base, and they have gunboats there. But you know, we have a wise counsel from the elders in our country's tradition. They say, "Let Bab
Kamawado.
Kamawado appuie des faits." Gardez pour ça, parce que ça c'est
Pueblo, et puis vous êtes ça, yes.
oui, eh bien c'est ça. So because I'm saying that Venezuela is our neighbor, we have to be concerned what's happening in our neighbor space, especially when part of that neighbor's military installations is in our waters, is in our 200-mile economic zone, and there is a military installation. In fact, a few years ago, something that kind of annoyed me was the President Maduro declared Bird Island, like the Essequibo, a zone of defense. That tells you that how much importance they accord to Bird Island. And Bird Island is very, very important to the state of Venezuela because it gives them a foundation, a milepost in the Caribbean Sea that no other South American or Central American country has. So Venezuela is anchored right next door to us. Now, people have raised the question: is should we be fighting for Bird Island? I don't think so. As I've said before, that issue had been solved before we became independent. The major powers in the sub-region, U.S., Netherlands, and France, those three powers had accepted Venezuela's historic claim to Bird Island long before we were independent. So that's solved. But what put a twist in that equation after that, all of that, is the law of the sea convention, the first law of the world dealing with oceans, came into effect around 1976-77. And it for the first time established that, you know, the difference between an island and a rock. And that's what Bird Island is. It's defined as a rock in international law, meaning it has no territorial waters, like 12 miles. Normally, countries have 12 miles of territorial waters. Rocks don't have that. And secondly, they don't have economic zone. Whereas like to our west coast and to our east coast, we have 200 miles of economic zone. That's ocean, but whatever is there is we have a stake in it.
Belongs to us. Yeah.
It belongs to us. We can develop it. So
right.
But anyway, so I wanted to just emphasize that what's happening in Venezuela is important to us. But more than that, two other reasons why. You see, Venezuela historically has been a country that has always looked out for Dominica. And that goes back way before President Chavez. That goes back to President Andres Perez in the 1980s when Miss Charles was our prime minister. And Miss Charles was even able to get help from Venezuela. I believe a housing scheme, Alvin, up by the prisons. I believe that was Venezuelan finance.
Yeah, the 6 Diamond Boulevard. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So historically, they have always been, you know, close in support of our independence. I believe one of the first countries to establish diplomatic relations with Dominica. And over the years, they've given help. And under the Chavez Maduro regime, you're well acquainted with the Petro-Caribe, another initiative by which they were helping Dominica. Well, I think the Petro-Caribe was conceived with a good brotherly camaraderie concern. But then when Venezuela got hit with sanctions, it made it very difficult for them to continue to provide oil and concession to the Caribbean countries. I should say that there were only two countries who were not involved in Petrocaribe from the Caribbean. One is Trinidad and Tobago, and the other one Barbados. I think Trinidad they still have some oil, and Barbados said that they already had made arrangements with other suppliers, so they didn't get into Petrocaribe.
Okay. Lofty, you want to chime in a bit? I see our guests chiming in earlier clock already. There are some questions being posed.
Yeah, some comments and questions they are coming in through.
Which we will take in a few. Yeah. But go ahead, Lofty.
Crispin, one of the burning questions or scenarios on a number of people's mind, and let me just shoot straight at you in terms of those that comment. Some people are against the military intervention, for want of a better term, by the United States in Venezuela. Some people are for it. You, Crispin, give us your perspective, especially as it relates to some people who may be for it or some people who may be against
it. Yeah, okay. Well, I would say that war is something that I can never be for. Mm-hmm. I can never be for any military intervention, in especially a big country versus a small country. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. The second thing is that people think about war, and especially those policymakers who decide about where to fight and all of these things. But they never think about the aftermath of when they do a military intervention. I just want to think of a country like Iraq, for example, which is a similar equation to what we have unfolding in Venezuela, where the US is going to intervene to remove a government, to remove Saddam. They did that to remove Saddam Hussein on the false pretext. They're lying, basically. And I knew that, I was in the Security Council when the US announced that they had evidence of weapons of mass destruction and why they were going to war against Saddam Hussein. I was in the Security Council that day, and I knew they were lying. I knew that Colin Powell was not telling the truth right then and there, because I had seen that playbook played in Grenada in 1983, So they were doing that. And this is exactly where we are now. We are where a country that seemingly took a line of not taking dictate from Washington is going to face Washington's wrath. Now, let me say that it's not because Venezuela did nothing wrong that the US is intervening. As you well know, the Trump administration in the first term had plans to intervene in Venezuela. They didn't quite know how to do it. They did something foolish. And that is, they tried to install a president who had never run for office. He had not even run for the presidency, yet they wanted to just install him as the president of Venezuela, a man called Juan Guaido. You probably remember that name, Lofty.
Yes, indeed.
Juan Guaido now, there's no way he could ever govern Venezuela, because you can't govern Venezuela unless you can control the military. Venezuela has a very large military. And whoever thinks that they can govern, they better have the support of the military. Otherwise, they won't be able to last very long enough in power. And that's one of the variables that's at play right now. The part of the problem there is a political problem, which, you don't always solve political problems with military means. Venezuela has not had a free and fair election, maybe for the last 2 cycles. And the opposition has gained momentum. The problem with the opposition is that, you know, they didn't have a clear leader for a while. And then they eventually end up with this lady, Maria, I can't remember her name right now. I should have known her name, but anyway, she's the one who won the Nobel Peace Prize this
Yeah,
year.
Miss Mashad, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So she's saying the kind of things that Washington wants to hear. She basically wants to um, open up the oil sector to American corporations. That was what that Chavez was able to do to stop that, to change that reality that the oil industry belonged to Venezuelans. And then he kicked out the American companies. I think the only one that remained was Chevron. And despite the sanctions, Chevron was allowed to stay by the US. Now, they, so I didn't want to depart from the point that these two election cycles created problems for Mr. Maduro. And this last election that was held earlier this year, he came up short in terms of number of votes. And then even when the other leaders in South America were asking him, well, show us your recount and all of that, he's yet to do this up to this day. And so he has lost really the legitimacy to govern, really. And I'm afraid they're handing everything to the opposition, which is the rich people. The oligarchy is very much involved in the opposition. And whereas Chavez had rolled back the control of the oligarchy and the rich people in Panama, in Venezuela, any change of government with the US involved with an intervention will seek to reinstall these people who have been governing Venezuela for a long time, from maybe independence to now.
All right. So at the end of the day, thanks, Crispin. At the end of the day, you said, I took note, you said that political problem, there's not need for any military intervention for political issue, like the election that was clearly bought by Maduro in 2018, I believe thereabout. So in that case, brother Gregoire, what is the solution to that problem in terms of Maduro stealing an election, staying on the backs of the people, and some persons are suggesting it is because of the largesse of the oil that the Americans are going after. How do we solve that problem?
Right. Well, you know, one has to separate the political problem from the military.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have political problems of governance in the country, where especially where the the focal point of that political problem is free and fair elections, then you automatically have an unstable country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we have similarities with Dominica in that realm. Now, the fact that for two elections the opposition has been gaining ground, and they're able to actually show where their support is. They've been very adept at that. Now, Maduro did something before the election. They made it the candidacy of the lady, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. They made it she would be ineligible to contest as the presidential candidate. So what she did, she got a proxy, and the proxy ran with her support and won. And that has destroyed completely Maduro's legitimacy. He really can't argue why he's still there. So my thing is that he needs to be eased out, but it's easier said than done because Venezuela is extremely polarized. You can imagine what's at stake there, Lofty. The the Chavez supporters,
Mm-hmm.
what they see ahead is they're going to be thrown out of power. And that's scary. You understand? So, and then it's going to be done in a way that will be irreversible because the US is going to put its stamp there.
Mm-hmm.
The US is going to, you know what they're going to do? They're going to decapitate the Venezuelan military. That's the US wording. That's the words they use when they do this kind of thing. So they're going to decimate the Venezuelan military and all of the weapons that they have gotten from Russia. They're going to destroy them. That's what's going to happen there. The other thing that is of interest to me, as I was looking this morning at a picture in the New York Times, and it's showing where in the Caribbean Sea where the different warships are based, and they literally have the entire coast of Venezuela covered, and their ships also in the Guyanese waters around there. So the only way that the Maduro could escape by sea, it would have to be on submarine. And I believe the US is looking for that too. That's why they have nuclear powered submarines there as well. He can't fly out, they will bring that plane down. The only option for him would be escaping through the land border, the Colombia, which is they have a land border with Colombia. That's the only way I could see Maduro escaping with his life. So
But let me just kind of piggyback where Lofty thing, because I kind of get what you're saying. But there are thousands, thousands of Venezuelans that are prepared to die and fight for their country. And clearly, the US is not going to put that USS Gerald Ford battleship in the region. Like you said, it's one of the biggest. So it is really a David and Goliath situation. Now, the casualties that will come out of that may not only be Venezuelans or Venezuela. Trinidad is right there. Ghana is right there. Even Dominica, and we talk about Bird Island. One of these missiles or one of these things could drop on Dominica. Travel is going to be disrupted. Nobody wants to fly in that region, in that space. The US might say no plane or no fly zone. So Dominicans cannot visit Dominica. Grenada, I mean, it is so huge and complicated. Where does CARICOM come in all of that? Because although the results of that may not necessarily be like a next Haiti, but like you've just alluded earlier, we saw what happened in Iraq, in Iran, where the US went in, and at the end of the day, they just pretty much didn't care two hooks. So what advice would you give? It might be a little early in the conversation, but as a former UN ambassador, what would you say to the foreign ministers, to the ministers of aviation, tourism? I mean, what can we do to de-escalate? Because clearly they go behind Maduro. His supporters are going to fight for him. He's 1,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, whatever that number is. They'll fight. They will die with their boots on. So where do you see that?
yeah, well, I think we are almost at that breaking point where there will be a response. I think believe that the Venezuelans will, like you say, Venezuelans are typically Latinos, and Latinos never like the boot of Uncle Sam on their neck. They've always fought against that. Their whole being is Yankee. They always seen the Yankee as oppressors. Um, I think a number of scenarios can play itself out. There could be a limited U.S. I mean, let me say, put out three scenarios I see that could play out.
Okay.
Yeah. Scenario one is a military takeover, a Venezuelan military takeover of the state, and President Maduro either is arrested or whatever. The U.S. will still want to destroy weapons. They will destroy some sites, even under that scenario. But
but let me just, I know you're going with the three scenarios, but let me just ask quickly. Under what authority would they be doing that, to do that military takeover of Venezuela? What authority, what law, what UN law, what international law give them the right to do that? Because this is not a U.S. territory.
Well, that's true, but Iraq was not a U.S. territory either, and Afghanistan was not a U.S. territory either. Alvin, when it comes to major powers, they intervene in their best interests, and everybody else's interest is secondary to their interests. They don't care. And the U.S. right now, I believe what's driving this intervention is not so much Maduro. Yes, Maduro and his governance of elections is an issue. But the U.S. is looking at having the largest endowment of oil in the world under its control. Venezuela being the country with the largest deposit of oil in the world is one of those countries. But you also have Guyana and Suriname. Can you imagine an equation where Venezuela, Guyana, and Suriname, all of that oil becomes under U.S. corporate exploitation? It's not a good prescription. It's not. So that is
scenario one. Give us
one.
the two other
Right.
scenarios.
Yeah. Scenario two would be where the U.S. intervenes and do what's called a surgical strike and destroy some military installations. I hope to God they don't destroy the electrical infrastructure. And that's something I wanted to mention. I haven't had the chance to mention that. But one of the things that impressed me about Venezuela is that although it's an oil exporting country, their electricity system is all hydro. They don't use diesel to run electricity in Venezuela. It's all hydro. And they have mega dams that generate hundreds of thousands of megawatts. They have a large population. But I was just impressed that they have clean electricity throughout the country.
And scenario number three.
Scenario number three is that not a surgical strike, the U.S. intervenes to occupy Venezuela like they did in Iraq. And that is the more frightening one. And because nowhere where they have intervened to bring democracy have they been able to get any democracy, left democracy behind. Look at Afghanistan today. Look at Iraq. Look at Libya.
Yeah. So what do you say to CARICOM? What would you advise CARICOM leaders?
I think CARICOM has to
position.
Yeah, I think they have to engage. I am hoping that the ambassadors in Washington are speaking with Secretary of State as a group, not as any individual country. Always better as a group. They should be raising concerns about what it means, what it will really mean when that intervention happens, is going to disrupt a lot of things that we're going to take for granted. It's going to affect shipping, for example, or pause it. It may not stop it completely, but it's going to be paused. The cruise ships already indicate that they will, any kind of intervention, they will stay away from the region until such time that they get an all clear. Um, you know, a lot of our food comes from North America, especially the tourism-based countries. Um, they have to import what the tourists eat. So that can be affected by shipping lanes being closed. The Caribbean Sea is a hotbed right now. We have not seen it anywhere close to that. The last time I think was about 1989 when the U.S. intervened in Panama. But some people are saying that it's the U.S. presence, the naval presence in the U.S. in the Caribbean, is like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Of course, I was only 6 years old at that time, so I don't know much about how the Caribbean Sea looked. But all I can say is that every century in which the United States has been in existence, we're talking 2 centuries, the U.S. has imposed its will in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean has always been a theater for war among powers, whether it was in the 1700s between France and UK and Netherlands and Denmark. The Caribbean Sea has always had, in every, starting with Columbus, in every century the, after Columbus came, the Caribbean Sea has seen battleships and war and fighting. And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, Alvin, just before we take that all important break in the next 2-3 minutes or so, let me just put a spin on basically what I heard Crispin said. And I agree with Crispin 100%, where he said that all countries will operate in terms of what is in their best interest. And so America, I believe, is doing that, that showdown with Venezuela. Some persons believe, as Crispin alluded to earlier, because of that large oil depository that Venezuela as a country is blessed with. And so whatever intervention, military or otherwise, that America does there, obviously, I believe some of the, as they call it, the spoilers of war will go to America. We also have to take into consideration too the Chinese influence, the Russian influence. Venezuela is so close to America in terms of it being a backdoor, as it were. Whenever I know I can speak for that as a fact, whenever some of the Americans, especially some of the diplomats, arrive in Dominica now, one of the questions that always pop up is, what is the Chinese influence in Dominica like? And we know that Maduro has sort of an open door policy where Russia is concerned, and the Chinese of late. And so America will protect America's interests. Whoever president that is there, Trump or not, Trump is there today, so he's doing what the Americans now by and large want them to do. And so the Russian influence, the Chinese influence, Venezuela is sitting on this pot of oil, as it were. And coupled with that, as Crispin said earlier, Maduro did not and keep not making it right for him, in that he is prepared to steal elections time and time over again. So I am of the firm belief now, it is the machinations of those elections that Trump is using as, should I say, as an excuse now to get his hands, or to get America hands, as to exactly onto what they want from Venezuela. And to me, that is where I see it. That is how I see it. And in terms of the end game, or what is to come, that large military buildup outside of Venezuela, Crispin Gregor, Alvin Thomas, and the listening public, that is not there for sure. So I personally believe that some sort of surgical strike is coming. I believe Trump has already made up his mind. Maduro have to go. And so to me, just in a matter of days, either Maduro leaves voluntarily to save his life, to save his skin, or some sort of Delta Force, some sort of strike action, surgically that is, to prevent that kind of collateral damage where boots on the ground and occupation and whatever it is. Maduro days are numbered, and Maduro knows that. It is quite unfortunate that will be the end game, but that is how I see it ending. I'm not seeing it ending any better in that region, because this sort of armory that is out there on the waters, Trump is not going to pull back those troops, and Maduro is still alive. Just my take.
No, I think your assessment and analysis is on point. I tend to agree with most, if not all of it. Because first of all, to deploy that level of military gear is an expense. I mean, this is costing the US millions of dollars to do that. It's not cheap. I mean, I was in, and they're all out through the region. I was in St. Croix recently, as I said earlier on the program, and there were several days that I was there. There were military battleships in the waters in St. Croix, right there. Granted, St. Croix is a U.S. territory, but there were battleships there, and there were quite a few military personnel on island. So it is throughout. So I think your analysis is on point. The question I think that remains in all of us minds, and that is where I've been, kind of pushing to see where and how that Crispin sees it, is the casualty that will result from that, because we don't know how long that's paid off. I mean, look at what's happening in Ukraine right now. None of us thought that Ukraine war would have lasted the time and the length that it has lasted. I mean, look at what's happening in Palestine and Israel. So those things have a way of lingering. And in the process, the question remains, with all of this other influence that you just mentioned as well, the Chinese and the Russia, what kind of collateral damage that we will get, not just physical damage, but in terms of our whole economy. Our economy is fragile. We import more than we export. Our tourism is fragile. I mean, what's going to happen to us as we enter the new year 2026? And I mean, CARICOM seems now divided on the issue. So you're right.
Alvin, you keep mentioning CARICOM, but to me, CARICOM is a dead, D-E-A-D.
So it's CARIGO. Instead of CARICOM, it's CARIGO.
But let's take that all-important break. Crispin Gregoire, Alvin Thomas. We'll be right back in just a bit. Let's do this one from Singing Sandra. She says, the war, yes, the war goes on.
Devastation and destruction from ever since time began has been inflicted time and again by man against fellow man. Yet man would learn from history. It makes him more violent, producing deadly weaponry with nothing but evil intent. So the war could never be over. Peace will never be seen. Long as man in his quest for power keep destroying fellow human being. Fellow human being. I'm telling you, nobody, oh, nobody.
Folks, if you know this one, sing along, huh?
Nobody wins a war.
Nobody, absolutely nobody wins a war, says Singing Sandra in song.
Nations still hating one another and superpowers. They're looking for more power. As long as violence and
Yes, folks, we are coming to your comments on the live feed in just a bit.
It cannot be won.
Just in case you're tuning in at this time, 7 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. We're having a very candid conversation with our brother here, Crispin Gregoire, indeed, as to the ongoing showdown with Venezuela and the United States.
May never rise up again. Collapse of the money system, disruption of foreign trade, people turning against their leaders for the blunders that they have made. Environmental pollution, radiation taking its course, and the thousands that die in battle. Oh, what a waste of human resource. Of course, I'm telling you, nobody, oh, nobody. When you really think of it, nobody wins a war. The brutal clash of ideologies, carnage and social anarchy, and life reduced to pitiful dimension. The falling back of progress and growth for entire generation. Sister, the war will go on.
A very interesting number indeed.
No, the war will go on.
From Singing Sandra. Folks, the numbers to call into the Civic Vibes program, they are on your screen as we speak, just in case you need to call into the program. Let's take one more verse and get back to our guest here.
War is just like a racket. It pays dividends for a few. But what does it profit the masses? I mean laymen like me and you. While the leaders playing their chess games, using the masses as pawn with political propaganda, the massacre still goes on. Soldiers, they never start it, but they give their lives easily. While the leaders are in a safe place working out strategy. So you see, I'm telling you, nobody, oh no.
Chiquito Thomas.
When you really look
Right here, the brave leaders of the Caribbean, none of them, they are talking, they all go very, very quiet, and he's wondering why.
the weak and the mighty, great
I too am wondering why.
war can create and destroy politics.
That is why I said this entity called CARICOM,
Sister, it cannot.
to me, it is dead.
The war will go on. No, the war will go on. It cannot be won.
What about Alba?
Object of war is simple. Just conquer and take over. It doesn't matter how many people get wiped out in the massacre. Enemy must be vanquished. The battle has to be won. But the conflict will never be over. Cause the agony lingers on. There'll always be more dictators, more Hitlers, more Saddam Hussein. And with these lunatics in power, it will just dance all over again.
Yes, folks, it is 10 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock, not just in Dominica, but in our region. We're having this conversation with none other than Crispin Gregoire. And so, yes, we're going to go to the live feed now to take some of your comments right there. But Crispin, before we take some of the comments, this setup, this agreement set up in 2004, I believe, about Alba, rather, this alternative to the Americans, rather, in terms of policy and treaty and treatment as it relates to CARICOM and the countries therein. What about Alba? Is Alba still alive, Crispin, based on your knowledge, your information? And what are they saying now? These countries who signed on to Alba, these 10-member countries.
Yes. Yeah, Lofty, I'll speak to the question of Alba, but I don't want us to lose an important point that both you and Alvin raised before on the Russian and Chinese involvement. I think it's important to put that in perspective, and I'll come to Alba.
Yes.
What was very interesting to read at the end of October, there was a Washington Post story that said that President Nicolas Maduro was reaching out to Russia, China, and Iran to enhance its one military capabilities and solicit assistance. And the specific things he was asking for was defensive radars, aircraft repairs, and potentially missiles. And this is what U.S. intelligence picked up, from documents that they obtained, and the Washington Post saw those things. And Maduro was asking for them to expedite these deliveries of these whatever help that they can provide him. And he told this. It says here that the documents the transport minister of Venezuela, Ramon Celestino Velasquez, also recently coordinated a shipment of military equipment and drones from Iran while planning a visit to that country. He told an Iranian official that Venezuela was in need of passive detection equipment, that's GPS scramblers, and almost certainly drones with 1,000 kilometers range, that's 600-mile range, the documents state. So of course, you see these other countries. It's not just Russia and China, but also Iran. Um, with the Russians, they've been cooperating with Venezuela for a while. The U.S. sanctions forced Venezuela to look elsewhere. It used to be that the military of Venezuela, most of their weapons came from the United States. But when the US put sanctions on them, they could not even buy weapons from the US. So they shifted to China and Russia. Of course, Russia is always looking for people to buy these weapons. And they make good weapons too, let's face it. And the Chinese are now making very good weapons. So they have been able to help Venezuela to soften the sanctions. They've put some really stringent, thing on that, on Venezuela. Forgot to put that phone off. Sorry about that. Uh, so
Yeah, no problem.
the, the Russians are there, the Chinese are there, and their involvement has been to kind of blunt, if you will, the sanctions of the United States. For example, one of the ways that Venezuela has been able to sell its oil is not through using dollars. So they're doing trade with China in Chinese currency, trade with Russia in Russian currency. They're not touching dollars at all, because dollars is one of the sanctioned areas for them, for the Venezuelans. So one can't really blame them if for their own survival they had to turn to the Russians and the Chinese
Yeah.
and the Iranians.
All right, indeed. Let's get to some of the comments here because
Well, let him
folks they are
comment on
speaking.
the Alba before
Let
we
me
get
say
to
let me say something about Alba before we go to the
Yes.
comments. Alba is not as functional as it was in its heyday from 2004 to about 2010. I think after 2010 and after the death of President Chavez, Alba began to lose steam. And if you look at the membership of Alba, it's not a lot of countries. You have Venezuela, Cuba, I believe Ecuador and Bolivia, um, and all the rest are OECS countries.
Yes, yes.
They are not,
Nicaragua is part of them too.
and Nicaragua, right? I forgot to mention Nicaragua, right? Um, the rest of the members are the OECS countries, not even the bigger CARICOM countries like Jamaica or Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago. It's only the OECS. So ALBA is Venezuela, Bolivia, um, Nicaragua, Cuba, and the OECS. That's what ALBA is. That was not the intention of President Chavez. It was to really, it stands for the Bolivarian Alternatives for the Americas. It was to present a different development model for these countries, but it has not worked out well. But I have to say that one thing that did work for a while was the Petrocaribe, which was part of the ALBA, one of the byproducts of the ALBA thing. But then when the sanctions began to bite, Venezuela could not even supply oil anymore to the ALBA countries. And one of the countries most dependent on oil, on Venezuelan ALBA oil, Petrocaribe, is Cuba. And one has to worry about what could happen, if I have my own fears about whether we will end up in a larger conflict of which Cuba, the U.S. might want to think emboldened and want to intervene in Cuba, and then we might have even a bigger catastrophe.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Crispin. Alvin, you'll take some of the comments. Whilst I take some as well. Let me just take the first two here. Guvelma Hambrin writes, America has no one but themselves to blame for Russian and Chinese stronghold in the Caribbean. They call the Caribbean the back door, and last year they treat us as dump. Lest we forget, Trump referring to Haiti as the shithole country. This person continues to write, America has no need for us because we do not pose a threat to them. Those of us who see America as embracing us, we are wearing our blinkers on. We need to associate with those who offers a helping hand. Finally, that person writes, it is not coming from America. So that is one point, Crispin, you can respond to. Clyde Gregor writes here, you do not have good government in the region, and the United States respect and adding insult to injury, the leaders are also still in election, so they cannot, bargain with the US government. So blame your voting choice, not America. These two scenarios for your comment, Crispin.
Well, as far as those governments that have not managed their electoral governance properly, and they have chaos as far as the election goes, that's being noticed by Washington. I'll tell you one thing, despite a lot of changes that are going on in Washington, there are some consistent things. One is that they are paying attention to the quality of elections in the backyard. They did not do it as acutely as they thought they would when they were there in the first term. And you might remember in that first term, you had the problem of elections in Dominica, and you had the problems of elections in Venezuela at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So elections matters, and where you have bad electoral governance and bad elections and elections that are not free and fair, the U.S. will begin to pay attention to you. Now, if you add the variables to that, if you are an outpost for the Chinese in the Caribbean, you're going to be under scrutiny by the US. I find it a very interesting development, a historical one at that. You know, where powers in the Caribbean have always fought against one another is because they've been challenged. So they fight, and they force countries to do what their bidding is. We are at that point where the Caribbean countries really, I don't care how much they shout about zone of peace. That's not falling in the ears of Donald Trump, President Trump, that he could care less about your zone of peace. What he's concerned about is that oil there, and you know what really makes me concerned is that one of the scenarios for military intervention in Venezuela, and that we're talking about last week, that was they showed that sending U.S. forces to seize control of Venezuela's oil fields is one of the objectives, or one of the reasons why they should go in. So but beyond oil, there are other minerals that are very important. Venezuela is not a small country; it's quite big. They have precious rare earth, which is what the country's major powers are fighting over, rare earth. Because if you have rare earth, you can build military weaponry that nobody can touch you with. If you have rare earth, you can build electric cars. If you have rare earth, you can some of the all of the digital um, technology prototypes that we're using, like cell phones, and in particular cell phones. You need rare earth to make cell phone batteries. So there's a fight now between among the powers. China having the most rare earth. United States doesn't have enough, but they want more. So they're now poaching countries that have rare earth. Venezuela is one of them. One of the rare earth they have is called lithium, which you need to make batteries for electric cars. You also need cobalt to make batteries for cell phones. And there are other minerals that, what we're talking about, the 21st century industries. We are moving away from cars that use combustion engine, that use petrol. By 2045, they'll stop making cars that use gas. So, the world is in a rapid change, and the powers are lining up. The US is getting weaker as a power, without a doubt. The US is getting weaker.
Yeah.
The US is the largest debtor nation on earth. They're actually ill-equipped to go and fight another war. Maybe they think in their own calculation it'll be a quick fix, that they wouldn't have to put their troops there like they had to do in Iraq. We don't know these things.
Yeah. Thanks. Alvin.
Yeah. I have a comment there that I will take, but just quickly though, based on what you just painted, Crispin, they're trying to get the rare earth and all of that in Venezuela. Would you say that we have not outlived colonization? Because back then, like the wars you spoke of before, Europe and them were fighting for sugar. We could produce sugar. We could produce all sorts of stuff. So one will ask, is colonization over? It is still with us even in 2025.
It's not over. It's in a newer form. What we call the neo-colonial strand of it, and that is, you don't have to be physically in the countries as they had to do during the colonial time. They can by remote control outside the countries control them, and one of the ways to do that is through their currencies. All currencies that are tied to the US dollar, for example. Um, the medium for trading is the US dollar. It used to be gold before the US dollar. You remember we moved from the gold standard to the almighty dollar? Well, the almighty dollar is now facing its own future problems, because America is now the largest debtor nation on earth, with a debt of $37 trillion. And it's because they went to fight wars, that put them in that crisis. They went and they fought a war against Afghanistan. They spent a lot of money there, and then they had to run. They went to Vietnam before that. They had to run for their lives, kicked out and beaten. Afghanistan, kicked out and beaten. Iraq, they had to run away. They could not bring democracy there. So they have been taking their beatings over time. And these things are costly. Wars are costly to the US.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Costly and dangerous.
And now they have, imagine the cost. They have 10,000 troops in the Caribbean right now. these are not those on the ships, right? You have another 4,000 on the ships. So you have at least 14,000 troops in the Caribbean Sea right now. That and the cost of having the ships there, it's gonna cost them some
It's
money, and
expensive. Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
and they
Okay,
don't Americans don't like to die.
one of our guests here is saying, Clyde Gregor, CARICOM is divided and currently fighting each other over St. Vincent's election. Mia, Skerrit, and Ralph, the very ones who suddenly came up with free movement. You need to understand CARICOM is a lost case unless we change the leaders in the island. So do you think changing the leaders is going to answer it, or just 6 of one, half dozen of the other?
Well, I respect how governments come to power in different islands. I think for the most part, we still have a reasonable democratic order in the Caribbean, especially the former British colonies that got their independence. And you add to that Suriname. Haiti has had its own long-standing problems. Um, I don't think that CARICOM is irrelevant. I think CARICOM is important. Um, but when it comes to superpower politics and rivalry, little island states like Dominica don't really matter in my view. Yeah, it's good to be part of a small block of
Alvin,
countries.
Alvin, 1 minute, Crispin. Sorry.
That's why.
Alvin, can you turn your mic down, please? Yeah, thank you. Yes, Crispin, sorry about this.
Yeah, I was saying that in the equation we're in, where we're really talking about a rivalry among powers, major powers. We have United States, we have UK, and then we have China and Russia. Five major powers, all of them in the Caribbean Sea. That's the reality that we have. Now, as to whether the CARICOM countries can bring any change of heart in Washington, I am very skeptical about that. Very skeptical.
Yeah, some more comments coming in here. Thanks very much, Brother Crispin. Dorival Drago writes, the American armed forces in the Caribbean is not good for the region. Caribbean leaders, if we can call them that, should summon a meeting in person with the American Secretary of State to display their disapproval and request that the U.S. withdraws its forces before things gets out of hand. Your take, Crispin.
I think it's worth it trying that, Dory. I know the person who wrote this. I just think that time has passed. I think we are on the march to real bullets that's gonna start flying. Showdown, yes. We've passed that.
We've
We're
passed that
way
phase.
past the
Passed that
talking
phase.
stage. The
Chiquito
President Trump has said that. He said that last week that the time for diplomacy is over. However, I should mention that there is a fight within the administration of those who would want to intervene right away, and those who say let's talk, let's keep talking. Because if there's a thinking that maybe Mr. Maduro might just decide to throw in the towel and resign, and agree, and his party agree to an orderly transition of power. That is where I think it gets really murky, because we're talking about the Chavez supporters, like a Dominica, like a St. Vincent, have been in power for 20 something years already, and they're sort of entrenched governments of one party, So it's the dynamic within the country is something that we need to focus on. Even without a U.S. intervention, Venezuela lost 7 million people as refugees, people who left. That's how badly things are. If you have a military intervention, you're going to have a serious refugee problem that's going to affect all their neighbors. I'm talking of Colombia, I'm talking of Guyana, I'm talking about Suriname to some extent. They don't have a border with Venezuela, but they're not too far away. So, but particularly Guyana and Trinidad and Colombia, those free countries, could see serious streams and bands of refugees inundating their borders.
And talking about Trinidad, why do you think, Crispin, that the prime minister there basically took on that posture in terms of what some people may deem as supporting the US in that engagement where Venezuela is concerned?
Yeah, very good question, Lofty. Well, people in government, um, well, if when you are in government, you have to make sure that you're managing the range of developments that are occurring that would have a bearing on you.
Mhm.
Now, in the case of Trinidad, like Dominica, but even more so because they're much closer country to Venezuela. They're only 7 miles away.
Yeah.
They've been adversely affected by the drug trade over the years. The drug trade, Trinidad has been used as an entry point for drugs coming from South America. Not so much from Venezuela, but more from Colombia and places like Ecuador, Bolivia, right? In fact, I was reading recently that the major the major place from which drugs are being shipped from to other parts of the world, from cocaine we're talking about, is Bolivia, not Venezuela. So this charge about that these drug guys, these little boats, drug guys, it's not all correct. That is a good smoke screen. That's a good way of saying we have a reason for what we're doing. But I don't believe those reasons can stand up in court international law.
Yeah.
But you had another comment.
Yeah, two comments here, Alvin, before I move back to you. Marshall says here, our region will be affected in some way. The only response, he says here, and action that our leaders, independent states, can take is to find or to make a way to meet urgently and discuss our interests, he says here. Clyde Gregoire says, I love Kamala. Her head is on. Guvelma Hambrin writes, final comment here before I move back to you, Crispin. Help me make the connection between Venezuela's oil and narcotics. America is using the narcotics trade to target Maduro. If they see Maduro as a narco dealer, tell me what is the rationale for taking control of the oil fields in Venezuela?
Right. Well, the the oil, President Trump is a very big fan of oil. I don't know why he doesn't believe in climate change. He said it's a hoax. And then his favorite phrase is "drill, baby, drill." Well, they have drilled enough of the shale oil. One of the reasons the U.S. Had such a strong production of oil in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, is because they were drilling in the shale, in the bedrock of where the oil is. So little what's left there. When you suck that out, there's no oil left
That's right.
there. That's what's happening to the US. So that is why in their goal to return to the glory days when they were a major industrial power producing everything, long before we knew about made in China, it was made in the USA. They want to return to that, but I don't see how that's going to happen anytime soon. Not with that debt of $47 trillion. So the U.S. is in decline. I mean, that the reality is the America we knew when we were like I came here in 1975, and the America that I knew then is not the America that we have today. Of course, naturally there will be changes because it's 40 years already, going on 50 years. But America was not weak when I came here. Even though they had just emerged out of the Vietnam War, they got beaten in Vietnam, but they bounced back. They were able to bounce back. But after these last wars there of Iraq, Afghanistan, and fighting the Taliban and Al Qaeda, America took a beating, and they lost a lot of ground. So these are some of the realities we need to put together. And I should also say, in this conflict that we see coming here, we don't know yet how Russia and China will respond. That's an unknown. And the reason why I raise that is these two countries have made significant investments in the oil industry of Venezuela. And they also, especially the Chinese, they're after rare earth like lithium. Maybe they will let the Americans have some, and the Americans would love to put their hands on the rare earth of Venezuela, which the Venezuelans have quite a bit. I'll just list three other resources they have in abundance. They have lithium, they have iron ore, and they have cobalt. Those are important minerals that the world needs, especially for the industries of the 21st century.
Yeah, Crispin,
Yeah.
how do you speak to what one might say that the leaders that emerge today in the region sort of enables what's happening? The fact that the way elections have gone and the outcome of some of these elections, I wouldn't paint a broad brush across.
Yeah.
But you've seen, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, Ralph's been there for what, 6 terms now, going on maybe 7, I don't know, 5 going on 6. And we have our own concerns in Dominica, having one government for 25 years. And the relationship, again, that's been developed with the foreign powers like China and Russia. Would you say that that sort of plays into the hands of the America as well? And how, therefore, as citizens, we might be able to counteract that?
Well, I don't know as citizens how we counteract that, even being in the Caribbean vis-a-vis the US. I mean, the US doesn't really care about what our interests are. I mean, I'm just being very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the world that we are in, and we've been in that world for the last 50, 60 years, well, even like 80 years since World War II, the, that might is right. So if you are mighty and you have weapons and you can show off and you can put your wheel on other societies, then there's no one to who's going to sanction you, unless an adversary, an enemy would want to fight you. But you have nuclear weapons, so nobody's going to fight you. No one can force you to do the right thing. I mean, when they intervened into Iraq, they said it was for weapons of mass destruction. There were no such weapons there. But they destroyed that country, and that is what I'm afraid of for Venezuela, that Venezuela will be destroyed or could be destroyed. We don't know what kind of intervention it will be, but to destroy the Venezuelan army, that's 15,000 troops is not a match.
Okay. Now let me ask you though. I mean, some of us have the view that CARICOM is not what it should be, or what it's not doing what it should do. As a former ambassador to the UN, what role do you see the United Nations playing in all of this? Are they just as CARICOM, a toothless tiger, or can the UN intervene in that respect again, knowing, of course, that America is a powerful vote or voice in the UN? What can, from an international point of view, taking it from the local level or the regional level, but on an international scale, where do you see the UN coming in all of that?
Yeah. Well, the body of the UN that deals with peace and security is the Security Council. But the Security Council has its own problematic, and that is it has 20 members at any one time. 15 are elected and 5 are permanent. They never have to face an election. The permanent 5, we call them the P5. Um, for for the UN to be a major player, the P5 must agree to work together. Most times the P5 is not working together. And so it only takes one P5 don't agree, and that's called a veto. They block any action. Right. So the thing is that where you have the US as one of the players,
A member of the P5.
they're not going to go along with the Russians and the Chinese. Yeah, the P5, right?
So no
The permanent
Maui,
5.
no Maui, no
So
Maui.
no Maui, no Maui, we definitely Maui, and the problem is that these P5 countries, they just either abstain or nothing happens. They just kill it right there. I mean, look at the Gaza vote. The Americans, those people who've been following the UN very closely. Last week, the UN decided, okay, on peace in Gaza, the Trump plan, right? But Russia and China abstained. They didn't participate. They didn't, they just say, okay, y'all can go ahead and do what you want. We warn all you about what is coming. There'll be trouble there. We're warning you all, but if you all want to go, and President Trump so much wants the Nobel Peace Prize, anything with peace on it, he want to have his name there. I hear him say he has stopped 8 wars. I don't know.
How many was it? Was
it
was it said, Crispin?
8. Yeah, I can't count them, but anyway.
But talking about wars, there's a minister of war, Crispin. What's his name?
Yeah, they changed it now from the defense
Department of War.
Department
of War. Okay,
they changed it. Yeah.
Every time that name came up, it just struck me.
Yeah. But seriously though, go ahead, Crispin.
I was gonna say they had that name, before World War II.
Yeah. So he changed it back.
Department of War.
Yeah. But seriously though, Crispin, I mean, we're laughing at this, but I mean, what does the ordinary citizen, what can they do? That is the point, because at the local level, you may have a country that is riddled with.
I'm on a radio program. Yeah, all right.
You may have a local country that is riddled with a leader that has some dictatorial approach towards governance. No transparency. They do what they want as they want. They win elections when and how they want. Then at the regional level, you have regional organizations that have no teeth, no influence, OECS, CARICOM. And if the local people try to do something, then they bring the RSS on the citizens. And then at the international level, you're telling me that the UN there has no teeth as well. So what, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. What can and will the local man does on the street? Will he just say, well, you know what it is? It is what it is. I do whatever I can, and leave the rest up to God, or whatever the case might be. I mean, where is there a sense of hope in all of this for the average man, the citizen in these countries and throughout the region? That's a question. That's a hard question that needs to be asked.
Right. Well, I just by the experience I had watching the war in Iraq and how it unfolded, the US doesn't really care much about public opinion of other countries. When they're going to intervene, they're going to do whatever they want to do, and nothing's going to stop them. The one thing that helps, though, is when civil society begins to make an uproar about the impact it's going to have on people, because no one of these policymakers who are preparing for war. They are not thinking about what happens the day after the war. All the fighting happens and stops. People will be killed. There is no question in my mind that a number of Venezuelans are going to be killed, and maybe
And
people from
US, some US people too. Some
and some US
US.
people too. The US doesn't like to have its people on ground because they're afraid that their people can be captured as prisoners of war, and so they never want that to happen to them, to their people.
So Lofty, you want to chime in or you?
Yeah, go ahead. We are striking the end hour, but go on.
Yeah. So Crispin, what do you say to the local man or woman? Should he or she start stocking up rice and provisions and put his money somewhere and his clothes, and what does he do now? Because like you say,
I don't want to be an alarmist, but I would say that one of the things that would become scarce very quickly when that conflict.
Food security, food.
Yeah, well, food, but also gas, cooking gas. A lot of our people is cooking gas they use, even in the villages. Cooking
and
gas,
petrol for
a
their
lot of the
vehicle.
cooking
See what happened a couple years ago.
Right.
When we had
and the cooking
petrol.
gas in Dominica is largely coming from Petro-Caribbean. So if that gets cut, right there, production from Venezuela, that gets cut, you have a problem for cooking, especially in the towns like Roseau. Roseau people could not survive without having gas for cooking. That's the real situation. Then
you better start getting your Freestone thing out, Lofty.
But for the petrol for vehicles, we don't get petrol from Venezuela right now. It comes from Trinidad, and I don't know where else it's coming from. But it's not. They're not depending on Venezuela for oil. But diesel may be coming from Venezuela. I'm not sure. And most of our electricity is driven by diesel.
By diesel, that's right.
So yeah. Then as I was saying before, the cruise ship. I'm looking at. We're now in the beginning of the cruise ship season.
Yeah.
This could well turn out to be a watershed season if it's interrupted by this military naval activities in the Caribbean Ocean, in the Caribbean Sea. And then I mentioned about the refugees. One of the things that the U.S. did recently, they have this temporary protection status called TPS that they gave to Venezuelans. Over 200,000 Venezuelans had that status, which allowed them to be in the U.S. legally and they could work. Well, the administration has removed that. So now you have 200,000 Venezuelans who have to go back home.
Wow.
And that's a concern. That's a problem. Into an unstable environment.
All right, Crispin. Yes, yeah. Crispin, in terms of just one or two more questions coming your way, what we are witnessing now in our region, just trying to draw that conversation closer home now, is that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they are locked into election mode now. So too is St. Lucia. But there's a very worrying trend of late, Crispin, that I am seeing, and a number of persons are commenting on, in that there's this sort of cross-pollination or cross-border meddling, as it were, by different leaders through their party organizations in other countries' election. I heard Mr. J. Pierre came down here to Dominica and he said something words to the effect, Labour parties need to protect the vote. And when he said that, it struck a chord with me in that what I got from him is that there's this sort of consolidation now of Labour parties in the region, whereby Dominica will support St. Vincent. St. Vincent will do with St. Lucia. Matter of fact, Ralph said it. Ralph said when he wins in St.
And
Vincent,
Vincent.
he will be moving across in the next couple of days to support his brother Pierre in St. Lucia. So you can see, you can sense that sort of, you know, consolidation of labor parties now in the region. How frightening, how alarming is that poking its head, Crispy?
Right.
In terms of the protecting now of the elections in the region in general.
Yeah. Very, very interesting question. Well, let me say that all the labor parties are not of the same ideological outlook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the word Labor Party can be a misnomer, if you will, sometimes, because I, for example, the Barbados has two Labor parties. The two major parties are Labor parties. You have the Barbados Labor Party and you have the Democratic Labor Party. The Dominican Labor Party historically, its relationship was with the Democratic Labor Party, not the Barbados Labor Party, of which Mia Mottley is today the Prime Minister. The Labor Party of Dominica historically was with
The
Aaron
Democratic
Barrett's party.
Barrett.
Yeah. Now, similarly, the Jamaica Labor Party is not the party that the Labour Party of Dominica would have had relationship with. It would have been the People's National Party, Manley's party. So it's not what I'm trying to say is that all of the Labour parties are not the same, but there is what Lofty is raising. There is a grouping of Labour parties that have a very consistent policy, and they kind of stand for certain things. I would call them center left parties. They're not leftist parties by any means. They're center left. They're a little more progressive than those that are on the conservative side. So so you have the Antigua Labour Party, the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, the ULF in Gonzalez parties, I think it's United Labour Party or something like that.
Yeah.
The Dominican Labour Party is part of that same grouping, right? And then in Antigua, the Antigua Labour Party was also linked to that. Now, all of these Labour parties, they had links with the British Labour Party. And I should tell you, in 2002 or 2003, no, 2003, I went to the British Labour Party conference in Brighton for the Dominican Labour Party. So all of these parties that have sort of like-minded, they're linked. They were linked to the British Labour Party. Now, the Jamaica Labour Party and the Barbados Labour Party, they were never linked with the British Labour Party in England. So that I wanted to make this distinction for you.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to what Lofty is saying about these parties are working across national boundaries to support one another. There is that solidarity, and that's typical of Labour parties. Those of them that came out of the British Fabian Socialist Society background, they've always had a what's called an internationalist policy of linking up with one another. And you saw that during Rosie Douglas when he was in opposition. He used to get people from the British Labour Party to come all the way to Dominica to campaign with him. So there's that. I think it's something that will remain lofty. I don't think that's going to change, even though these parties have been voted out of office. I mean, the St. Lucia Labour Party has been voted out 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years. It's only Dominica and St. Vincent that hasn't had change of government through elections. But Antigua has had change. In fact, the Antigua Labour Party was in opposition for a long time. They lost maybe like 2 terms they were out.
Yeah.
You
Crispin,
know.
let me thank you for your response. Let me just crystallize in the words of Mia Motley, the
Yeah.
point that I made to you earlier.
Yeah.
Just take a listen to Mia. I think she was talking on a Labour Party platform in Barbados, I believe so, sometime earlier this month. Take a listen.
Okay.
The movement and the labor movement, but I belong to something called a labor movement, and the labor movement has in it the labor parties. I don't wear red by accident. I wear red because that is our color, and I lead a labor party. And in leading a labor party, I understand that other labor parties across this region have similar philosophies and have similar challenges. And we can't talk about working in an isolated way, because I've just shown you that the only way the region is going to get through this awkward moment, where all that we have come to take for granted is changing, is by cooperating together. But I belong to something called a...
One more time, Crispin, one more time.
Labor movement has in it the labor parties. I don't wear red by accident. I wear red because that is our color. And I lead a labor party. And in leading a labor party, I understand that other labor parties across this region have similar philosophies and have similar challenges. And we can't talk about working in an isolated way, because I've just shown you that the only way the region is going to get through this awkward moment, where all that we have come to take for granted is changing, is by cooperating together.
All right, Crispin, your thoughts. These are the words, exact words of Mia Motley, based on what I said before.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I expect a certain level of cooperation and between labor parties. It's just that I find it interesting in the Barbados context. They have 2 labor parties. They have the Democratic Labor Party and they have the Barbados Labor Party. It seems like both of them are linked to the Dominica Labor Party. So, well, I mean, all power to them if they can have solidarity and they could advance the interests of the region. Sometimes, politicians, they don't advance the interests of their people. So I wish them well, the parties that in working closely together. As long as they don't impede the democratic aspirations of the Caribbean people, I have no problem.
All right. Thank you very much, Alvin. We have to start to bring it down to a wrap now. Your final thoughts before we go.
Well, I think Crispin has unpacked quite a bit for us this evening on the program. It relates to this pending U.S.-Venezuela showdown. I think what is sort of disheartening, if I may put it this way, is where are the people of the region left in all of that? I think that is the million-dollar question that need to be asked. The average man on the street, the Joe Blow, who voted for government to represent their interests, now finds him or herself at a crossroad. Because when these mites start fighting with each other, then it's the guy out there who cannot get his supplies, cannot send his child to school, cannot get gasoline, cannot get cooking gas. I mean, they're the ones going to be affected. And that's why I asked the question earlier in terms of what do we do? I mean, do we throw our hands up in the air and say, well, it's over? Because clearly the Venezuela-U.S. military showdown, it's not going to be an isolated bilateral event. And Crispin mentioned what the U.S. people might have their eyes on. It's definitely it's going to create a regional shock with security, economics, humanitarian, and all that diplomatic spillover that he talked about. So it's a serious matter. I don't think the conversation that we've had tonight, it needs to stop there. I think the more information that is made available, so a citizen will become aware and conscious of what action that we can take, limited as they might be, what action we can take as individuals. The waste, question of waste. Do we look at that? The question of maybe planting some of the things that we take for granted, grow what we eat, as they say. It might be an opportunity for us to start focusing on our little backyard gardening, so we won't be able to go in the supermarket and buy the tomatoes and the cucumbers that we depend on to come in, but let's grow it ourselves. So I think we have to live the conversation with some sort of action point. What is it that we can do as individuals, as citizens? What continues or what still we expect the expectations of our leaders to be? And hopefully to see what sort of immediate intervention that can take place at whatever level. I don't think we should rule out mediation and effort, even regional cooperation among the leaders. I don't think we should throw it out completely off the table. I think we should still keep our eyes on that and hope that the region can develop from that. I haven't heard any, and I stand corrected, but I haven't heard any really strong statement coming out from the current chair of CARICOM, who is the Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica. He's the current chair of CARICOM. I haven't really heard anything strong coming out. I still think there is still a need that a visit can be paid to Washington. At the end of the day, the talks must never break down. There must always be that opportunity to continue talking until some resolution is arrived at. So that's what I would say on it now. But definitely, I think Christina pointed out quite a few areas that we need to be of concern of. And I really want to just thank him for taking the time to share that information with us on the program this evening.
Yeah. Well, let me say that it's really been a great pleasure of mine to be on this program and discussing this very dynamic issue, because it's the clock is ticking. It's like watching a real movie in time, and it's the different episodes that's coming, the different pieces that's coming into play. There are a lot of pieces. We're talking about what's frightening to me. We have about 17% of the U.S. Navy is in the Caribbean Sea right now. 17%. That tells you the level of weaponry that's there. And Venezuela is not a small country. I mean, it's a country where you could actually have a guerrilla war, and that's what Maduro and his people have decided they will fight a guerrilla war, and they could make Venezuela extremely unstable, and not only Venezuela but the other neighboring countries. So we have to begin to wrap our heads around how dangerous we might be entering a period of danger that could even bring on a multi-power conflict. I should say in all of that, one thing that's going to be very clear: the U.S. is going to do as it said. They're going to counter China in the Caribbean. I really believe that's what's coming after the Venezuela intervention. They're going to counter China in the Caribbean. And one of the countries that has a huge, probably the largest Chinese presence, is Dominica, with the airport that's being built. And the reality about the airport that's being built is being built by the adversary of the U.S. The last time that situation presented itself was in 1983, when the Cubans and the Soviet Union teamed up to build an airport in Grenada, and the U.S. intervened to stop it.
Yes.
And we are faced with a similar reality in 2025 in the Caribbean.
Yeah. Mr. Gregoire, someone text me private and asked me a question to ask you here. So let me just do that before you go. Can you ask Mr. Gregoire what he thinks of the possibility that the United States might not be trying to kill Maduro, but offer him a safe passage to a neutral country? Well, what is
and while you answer that, Crispin, I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're already out of time.
Yeah, we're already out. But just quickly though, the rest of the Latin American countries in what's happening there, because I'm sure they too not happy about it.
Yeah.
The spillover.
Right. Well, you know, the Latin American countries, they met. It's called CELAC. Is the grouping of Caribbean and Latin American countries. They met in Colombia. I know that Prime Minister Skerrit attended that meeting. Um, they we at this point where I don't know what the Caribbean countries could do really that would change the equation. We on a footing for war. We're heading to a war. We just don't know what day it will start. So,
So is there a possibility Maduro maybe offered a safe space?
yes, well, that Lofty, that has been in the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Maduro offered to resign. The U.S. is the one who has not accepted. They have a bounty on Maduro's head. They want him for drug trafficking. He's wanted dead or alive. $50 million on his head. And the CIA has been given free rein to do lethal things. They have the authorization to kill him. That's the reality we faced with. He's almost like a dead man walking, you know. And then who knows whether the military in Venezuela doesn't stage a coup any one of these days to avert the large-scale intervention. But I'll tell you one of the, even if they try the coup and overthrow Maduro, that will not stop the U.S. onslaught. The U.S. is out to remove the socialist Bolivarian government of Venezuela. And they will not stop until they have done that completely.
All right. Thank you very much for your final parting words, Brother Crispin. Thank you very, very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, folks, yes, that is it for us here. It's 8 minutes past the good old hour of 8 o'clock in Dominica.
Devastation and destruction from ever since time began has been inflicted time and again by man against fellow man.
So to all of you who stayed the course with us tonight, thank you very, very much.
Producing deadly weaponry with nothing but evil intent.
To our special guest here, Mr. Crispin Gregoire, former ambassador from Dominica to the United Nations.
Quest for power.
We thank him very, very much as well for taking time off to come and speak with us right here on The Vibes.
I'm telling you, nobody.
And to you, yes, you and you.
When you really think of it,
we appreciate you as well. So thank you very much for your eyes and ears each and every time. Whatever is left of your night, we hope that you do enjoy. Have a very blessed week ahead, huh? So on behalf of Alvin Thomas and the Civic Vibes team, we are out. See you guys next week Sunday, same time, same place. Bye-bye. We love you.
It cannot be won. Fall out from war is chaos. Plenty agony, plenty pain. Economy's left in shambles that may never rise up again. Collapse of the money system, disruption of foreign trade, people turning against their leaders for the blunders that they have made. Environmental pollution, radiation taking its course, and the thousands that die in battle. Oh, what a waste of human resource. Of course, I'm telling you, nobody. Nobody. When you really think of it, nobody wins a war. brutal clash of ideologies, carnage and social anarchy, and life reduced to pitiful dimension. The falling back of progress and growth for entire generations.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official position of Civic Vibes. Therefore, Civic Vibes accepts no responsibility for the content or views expressed during the program. The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official position of Civic Vibes. Therefore, Civic Vibes accepts no responsibility for the content or views expressed during the program.
But what does it profit the masses? I mean laymen like me and you. While the leaders playing their chess games, using the masses as pawn with political propaganda, the massacre still goes on. The soldiers, they never started, but they give their lives easily, while the leaders are in a safe place working out strategy. So you see, I'm telling you, nobody, oh nobody, when you really look at it, nobody wins a war. It has been the passage of history with the blood of the weak and the mighty. Great cultures vanished completely. War can create and destroy political boundaries as it goes on. Sister, it cannot be won. The war will go on. No, the war will go on. It cannot be won. The object of war is simple. Just conquer and take over. It doesn't matter how many people that wipe out in the massacre. Enemy must be vanquished. The battle has to be won. But the conflict will never be over, cause the agony lingers on. There'll always be more dictators, more Hitlers, more Saddam Hussein. And with these lunatics in power, it will just dance all over again and again. I'm telling you, nobody, oh nobody, when you really think of it, nobody wins a war. We need a spiritual revolution to stop this brutal aggression, or else peace in the world will always be out of our hands. As long as the quest for wealth and power still live in the hearts of man, brother, you all will go on. It cannot be won.